සුබ සන්ධ්‍යාව සියලු දෙනාටම වෙලාව 6යි. අපි වෙලාවට අපි පටන් ගමු. මොකද පවර් කට් එකකුත් එන කතාවක් තියෙනවා 6:30 වලට. So ඒක නිසා අපි ඉක්මනට කරගෙන ගියොත් හොඳයි at least presentation එක බලන්න. So අද ඇත්තටම we are trying to do something new in the sense we are trying to collect information on support and also knowledge from many people and trying to kind of write down a way certain things has to change. So we'll take up the topic and then discuss and then write something up and then we can put it on our website so anybody to see. So hopefully there'll be listening governments in the future who might make use of all these activities that we have done. And also the whole process will also educate the voters. So we'll hopefully have better decisions in the future as well. So what we do is not in loss, but it might take few years for us to see the results, but we should continue to do what we're doing. So today is a very beginning of a rethinking as to how to do a community-based bottom-up electoral process to consolidate a truly democratic homegrown governance paradigm. So before I introduce the speaker, I will go down, spend 2 minutes to discuss about what we are doing. We are an educational charity, Sri Lankans working for Sri Lankans, and we have focused mostly to help Sri Lanka to come out of the current problem and establish in a more secure system so that this kind of thing will not happen in the future. So you all are welcome to share your knowledge and expertise in any way, in any language, English, Sinhala or Tamil. And if there's anything that you can talk about, just write to us, admin@srilankaleads.com. So at the same time, we have to make an effort to get our religious leaders included in this process. And but we take a stand saying that the leads want religious leaders to get inclusive, but not to interfere with the governance, but to advise on maintaining the spiritual values in governance. So this is an important aspect, especially because the religious involvement will actually promote humanity within the governance, and that's what we want. And if we have humanity promoted within the government, so that we will not have governance that will be based on draconian laws, as what has happened recently. So if you know religious leaders, sometimes we have even normal people who are talking and very knowledgeable about the religion and its values, who can speak on the basis of leads, and that will be very useful. So this affiliation will help us focus on how and what leads should be doing to get our governments to follow suit. So again, if you have someone who can introduce this and talk to us, we welcome. So our petition is still ongoing, and please promote as many people as possible to sign this. We got the link at the very first page of our website, and this is asking for a referendum. At the moment, we got 272 signatures on this, but we do need to go up a significantly higher number before we take it up to the Supreme Court. Now let's talking about our democracy and why we need to have some change in the system. I thought I'll summarize from a few things in the past. Say the constitution we have is amended 21 times, almost like once in every 2 years. Power polarization has been the primary goal. That's what we understand as ordinary citizens. Then making politicians above the law and not accountable is the second goal. And has happened gradually over the last 20 years. Then creating division is the third goal. And you can see how it has happened. Then we got first-class citizens. That means who have political affiliations. We know them, we are friends, or we are kind of relatives or something like that. Then we have second-class citizens who does not have political affiliation or who does not promote or go along that path to have political affiliation. So they're less better off. They may not get the job they want. They may not get the contact they want. but that's what they are. But now we have a third class citizens as well. If you become a dual national, you become a third class because you have a different sets of values and rights. Now, use democracy to promote an autocratic system. That's what's again been happening. The best example is our current president, the allocation, how he was appointed, because in other countries, the president has the highest number of votes. But for us, it's something else. And also, there's been an attempt to destroy values and checks and balances. This, say, for example, one example is we allow even convicted murderers enter the parliament as members representing the public. So this is one thing. Then another thing is the maintain party leader autocracy at candidate selection level, because the party leader selects the candidates for areas. So he will select the people who want, not the person the people want. So this undermines democracy covertly, and that is the Manapa system that has destroyed the democracy at the root level without actually getting people to understand it a bit better. So with recent times and discussions, and lots of people say the democracy has to incorporate meritocracy. Now, meritocracy means a society governed by people selected by vote and merit. So we were talking about last time that at least at the ministerial level, you cannot have a minister who does not know the subject. Say, for example, you can't have a higher education minister who haven't even passed the O level, something like that. So you need to have some understanding as to who should be doing what subject. So basically, සුදුස්සාට සුදුස්සන දෙන චන්දක්‍රමයක් තමයි අවශ්‍ය. So we cannot continue to be a democracy with autocracy because මේ අත්නෝමතිකත්වය නිසා තමයි අපි පහළට යන්නේ දැන්ටත් තියෙන විදියට. And we also must realize the parliament is our highest institution in the land. And it needs to be smart, sharp, and intelligent to resolve national issues through debate and intellect. So this is why it is not a place for any Tom, Dick, and Harry, so that they can play about. That's what's been happening, you know that. And so let's do the system change together, and people's collaboration and support is required, and this is what we need to do this change. So everyone should be on the same path, and we should implement things that's suggested by many people, how to go about it. So this is important. So let's introduce today's speaker, Professor Lakshman Disanayake. Now Lakshman Disanayake has studied a lot of this and then understand this differently because he's created, worked abroad, worked locally, and then have various qualifications and spoken to students and general public. So, and his H index is 34, which is actually world's top 2% of scientists within the first 2%. So you can see how much effort he will take to use evidence and facts in his presentation. And he's had many awards, Vidya Nidhi National Awards, Presidential Awards, National Science Foundation Awards, and General Research Committee Awards, and so on. And he's been head and senior professor at the University of Peradeniya in physics, and then director of Postgraduate Institute of Science, and also now he's a research professor at NIFS. So let's welcome Professor Lakshman to give an initial talk. And I must say on this subject, the next 3 or 4 weeks, all Sundays are dedicated to this subject, and there are already speakers lined up. So you will see different aspects being spoken about this with time. Here, Lakshman, welcome.
Okay, thank you, Chula, for giving me this opportunity. First of all, I must say that I'm not a politician, I'm not a legal expert. I am simply a concerned citizen of Sri Lanka, aware of these political changes and what has happened and what is to be done. So this is an initial discussion where we all can participate in the follow-up discussions later today, or at the next Sundays meetings. So I will basically cover up the initial stage, focusing on electoral system, the procedures. We all remember during the last several months, starting this year, the changes happened in Sri Lankan political scene, Aragalaya, which was unique in a way in an Asian country, this type of uprising, because all these highlights that people need a change. People are, especially the younger generation, is fed up with the present political system and politicians, corrupt politicians, and they want a change. So they made a try, an attempt, which probably was successful to a large extent, but it didn't give the expected results. Okay, so we have to live with this group for at least for another year or several years. So the youth are struggling for a system change. System means what? System means the 225 MPs, including ministers and other political affiliates in the system, the constitution and the procedures, electoral systems, everything. So the system consists of all these things, people and the procedures. So today I'll be focusing on the electoral process, what we have now, and what do we expect, if there are any changes that we can expect for a better system. There's a saying from Martin Luther King Jr. When you are right, you cannot be too radical. When you are wrong, you cannot be too conservative. So one has to strike a balance, I think. Now, when you look at the situations in not only in Sri Lanka, in many parts of the world, the political and economic changes often influence one another. Both are connected strongly, as we see now in Sri Lanka. Economic crisis led to the political crisis, and we don't see any solutions in sight for both these, our economic crisis and the ongoing political crisis. If people want to change the systems, there are several ways. One thing is the reforms, political reforms, where we do not advocate overthrowing of basic institutions, government institutions, but we want to make radical, major changes into the procedures and into the election of people, etc. But we essentially remain within the given system. Revolution means an overthrowing of the existing system and come out with new systems. And there are examples also for revolutions, starting from the Industrial Revolution in Europe, the Russian Revolution, Chinese Revolution, Cuban, and lately in Iran, in Philippines, the uprising of people have changed systems. And another way is through a coup, a military coup or something similar, can change the systems. When a confidence problem exists between the people who desire democratic rule, but remain suspicious of both the fashion in which democratization is presented and the purpose of the democratic world. So if there is a suspicion in the public that they are not fully happy with the way the country is being ruled, then it's a situation where people would want some kind of reforms or revolution, or some kind of a major change in the system. So reform essentially means getting the public involved in a more practical and visible way in the decision making of the government, which we don't see at present in our government system. It's the politicians who make critical major decisions, and public has become mere listeners and hardly any control over the political decision making process. So very often these political power spaces are used to perpetuate government oligarchies in which nepotism, corruption, and personality cults are rampant. We can see the situation in Sri Lanka today. And during the last couple of decades, this has been happening. And people have no say in these things, at least no power to revert the process. So people have just become silent listeners. The need for a political reform is nothing particular to Sri Lanka. It's happening in many parts of the world, in many countries, because of the changes to the economy and how it affects the people. So first priority is that the people should think of changing the systems in a democratic way through political reforms as far as possible, rather than going into major revolution-like things or military coups. People will should try their best to get what they want through practical political reforms. And when we talk about democracy, most important political leaders are elected in free and fair elections to a large extent in countries like Sri Lanka or India. We have at least free and fair elections. Minimum, we can say, corruption in the electoral process. So Sri Lanka, India is classic examples of democratic parliamentary systems where we strike a balance between the principle of majority rule and the protection of minority interests at the same time through constitutional processes. So elections become a key process of establishing a new government, changing power, political power, establishing new political institutions, new political agenda for the country. Those days we used to have 5-year development plans each government has to present, and that is in practice even today in many countries like Singapore or Malaysia. We have 5-year plans. Now Sri Lanka doesn't have those at present. Not only that, at present, even the development plan of a government, it changes with the change of the minister. So there's no consistent development plans even at present. Whole thing is in a very dynamic situation. And in the case of Sri Lanka, we don't know where we are heading because there is no 5-year plan or any such development plan in hand. Primary elections is a way people, rather than going into a main election to elect candidate for the national parliament, some countries have primary elections where, depending on the country and administrative divisions within the country, voters might consist of a general public in what is called an open primary or a closed primary. These primary elections can be used to take the power of candidate nominations from the party leaders to the public. So to the people. So these primaries is a way, as we can see a little later, instead of consolidating all the mechanism of electing candidates from the party machinery to the public as far as possible. So let's see later how this is being done. Now, elections lie at the heart of democracy and remain the primary means through which individual citizens exercise their right to participate in public affairs and elect their representatives. Countries and people across the globe have recognized that free and fair elections, genuine elections, are crucial to a democratic requirement and imperative means of giving voice to the will of the people, which is the basis of government authority. This is the present system we are focusing on. For the right to vote and be elected to be exercised meaningfully, it is important that there is an environment in which human rights are respected and enjoyed by all individuals. In particular, the rights to equality and non-discrimination, freedom of opinion and expression, freedom of peaceful assembly and association. So these are the key elements then one should adhere to in these democratic election processes. Sorry. And human rights and elections are coupled together. People's right to participate in the conduct of public affairs is a fundamental imperative. Genuine and credible elections remain the most compelling and effective way for people to participate in governance and have their voices heard. Elections empower citizens to express their will and help to build or consolidate sustainable democracies. Okay, these are statements taken from Michelle Bachelet's United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, their agenda of their responsibilities. Universal Declaration of Human Rights from the same source. Every citizen has the right to take part in the government directly or through freely chosen representatives. Everyone has the right of equal access to public service in their countries. The will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of the government. This will be expressed in periodic and genuine elections. This is what we expect. So in Sri Lanka, just as any other parliamentary democracy, we have an electoral system and we cast our votes to the candidates of our choice and our choice of political parties. And we indicate our preference by checking the boxes. And we do this once in 5 years or 6 years at the national level and at provincial level at some other periods. So we cast our votes on a paper. In some other countries, they do it on punch cards or electronic machines. So this appears to be a successful democratic process of selecting or electing our ruling representatives to rule the country for the next 5 years or 6 years. So from 1978, as you all know, we changed from the parliamentary system to the presidential system. Major change to the constitution in 1978. And we know all the details of the system for the last so many years. So we have 22 electoral districts and proportional representation. 196 members of parliament elected by the people. 29 are elected on the basis of the proportionality. So we have a total of 225 MPs in the parliament. So this is a proportionate system, which is different to what we had until 1978. And also there is a requirement any recognized political party or independent group polling less than 1/20th or 5% of the total votes within the district is disqualified, and above that, all qualified. In each district, the political party or independent group securing highest number of votes is entitled to have one member. That is a bonus seat. So this is the system that we are practicing at present for the elections of our representatives. Now, different political parties, they present their candidates for the election, and based on preferential voting, each voter is entitled to indicate our preference within the list of candidates of the political party, and then those votes are counted, and representatives are elected based on these elections. But now what happens is the public has to vote to elect representatives presented by the political parties. And how they prepare the list, we don't have, the voters doesn't have much choice. So people are given a limited number of candidates from each party, and we go and cast our votes out of the people they put into their lists. We don't have much say beyond that. So this is a party list system, proportional representative system. However, parties acquire too much power when they can determine whose names will appear at the top of the list. So it's the party machinery which decides who will be their nominees for the election. So they select a group of people and of their hierarchy in some order. So people go and vote for them. And each these participating political parties will have their election manifesto, where they describe their policies, what they are planning to implement when they are elected. Can the voters request through a petition to make election manifesto of a political party a legal binding document? Now the political parties, okay, during the election, they present a set of promises that if we come to power, we'll do this, we'll do that. But beyond that, after acquiring the power, do they stick to their election promises? If they do not, what can the voter do? Wait for another 5-6 years? Can the election commission be empowered to seize the poll symbol and deregister or derecognize the political parties that fail to fulfill their promises made in manifesto? In the present law, this does not exist. So can't the voters, the public, request the election commission, the government, or whatever the administration to implement, to bring legislation to make sure that the political party or the government who comes to power will deliver their good as they promised at the elections. Because these promises are not legally binding at present. So this has been a major flaw of this system. They can do whatever they want after getting elected. If any government is voted and does not fulfill their manifesto promises without good and legal reasons within their first 12 months in office, they shall face prosecution under fraud law and must immediately dissolve their government. Okay, this is a suggestion, possible suggestion to make sure that they deliver what they have promised at the elections without deceiving public voters. Okay, this kind of petitions is not the first time, has been already submitted in the UK and also in the Indian Parliament a few years back. So what this is pointing out is that the election manifesto of political parties should be made a legally binding document. Okay. Can the politicians be made legally accountable for their election promises? It is obvious that the majority of the population finds the breaking of promises made during an election. This we have experienced over and over again, election after election. They promise one thing and they deliver something. And towards the end of their period, they have deviated from what they have promised to the voter at the elections. And voters are helpless. There's no legal provision to challenge this at present. But there is an issue here. It would be impossible to implement the legal enforceability of election promises, though, because of the format and procedures of governmental and legal systems. The major reason is that the question in stating legally accountable suggests that the election promises should be enforceable before the courts. However, that would mean that judges would be, overseeing the operations of the government. So there is some issue there, conflict, because the judiciary and the parliament are supposed to be independent from each other. So can the court make a ruling if the MPs or ministers do not deliver their goods as they promised? So this is a very basic problem in this parliamentary democracy, as we see. If this was the case, it would be contrary to the requirement that the laws are to be made by parliament and interpreted by the courts. So keeping the legislative, executive, and the judicial powers separate and independent. So there's an issue here. How far one can go, so citizen can go, if the politicians, elected politicians, do not deliver their promises. So there's a big question mark here. However, the universal rule of supremacy throughout the constitution of the ordinary law means that the parliament has its duty to adhere to the normal law when legislating. Therefore, parliament cannot make legislation that infringes upon people's basic rights. Yeah, there are some limitations, but overall, the situation is unclear whether the election promises can be challenged in courts. You must have observed people voting in elections. We vote to elect our representatives who form and run the government. These reps are expected to implement the government's policies and programs. People's participation in the election is what makes our democracy a representative and participatory democracy. But the meaning of people's participation does not begin and end with their voting in elections. So we have to go a step further, because we have hand over the running of the country to the set of politicians to form the government, who has promised us they will do this, they will do that. If they are not delivering their goods, what can the citizen do? So people's participation is also expressed through public debates, newspaper editorials, protest demonstrations, and their active involvement in government programs. Even in respect of the process, it includes the participation in campaign, political discussions, working for political parties. So many methods, but none of these are strong enough to change the government's way the government is handling their affairs. Nominations to elections, party leaders versus community-based nominations. In party list systems, seats in parliament closely match how many votes each party receives, but there is often a weaker constituency link. However, the party lists are the most popular way to elect representatives in the world, with more than 80 countries practicing the same thing. But under the party list system, the voters cannot pick the representatives as they like. And as a result, the politicians will not have a strong link with their voter base. So this is a very crucial problem here. They present us a list chosen by them, and we go to the polling stations and we cast our votes. we don't have much say of electing or selecting people outside their lists. So there's a basic flaw in the system. A constituency link means MPs representing local areas and are directly accountable to those areas for their services to the community, because it's the voter who knows who are the best people to represent their community, represent their village or city, town, rather than coming from elsewhere, from a party headquarters. So this has been a problem right through. So they get the people's vote and go to the parliament and deliver what they want, not what the voters want, not what they have promised, at least. So this is a very serious situation. The voters have to be seriously considered. Ensure that 225 honest political professionals committed to achieve the main objectives of the parliament with country-first attitudes are selected based on purely on meritocracy to represent a multitude 16.3 million of sovereign voters of Sri Lanka. National Election Commission to stipulate compulsory eligibility criteria and structured interviews, making system the applicant party candidates from time to time. Overall emphasis would be ideally be placed on lawyers, accountants, economists, and wise and experienced political professionals, since the main objective of the national parliament are to frame and approve laws and policies, control national finances, and approve national decentralized budgets, etc. Parties should function as registered corporate bodies and amend their own constitutions to conform to NEC regulations. So a large number of representatives ideally should have the country first attitude when they start their political career. These qualitative and attitudinal outlooks are strong expectations of the sovereign voters. Insist political parties to nominate professionally qualified social workers of a transparent and acceptable track record as candidates. There should be a provision to have primary mini election at village council level or municipality council levels by recognized political parties to select and recommend candidates for the main general election. So there is one way of filtering out the candidates whom the political parties are going to nominate as their representatives. Primary filtering mechanism. So people know who their representatives would be, and they have confidence through their track records of these people from their community. Yeah, sorry. Central pool of names. Yeah, there's another way, even in the present system, like what is adopted by the JVP, they have a pool of names filtered through some party mechanism. But there's no major difference. Again, it's coming from the party hierarchy. But maybe a little more practical way of filtering the candidates. So there can be several mechanisms to do this, but I think the voters should have the final say whom their representatives should be. I mean, a wider say, rather than selecting one out of the 5 recommended by the parties. Top-down versus bottom-up approach. Processes triggered by elected representatives or political parties are top-down process. This is what we are experiencing now. We are practicing. Processes triggered by citizens are bottom-up process. We don't see this kind of thing, bottom-up approach of selecting people. So ideally, that should have been the case situation. Then there'll be really people's representatives. So democracies function properly when they respond to and act on problems, concerns, and issues that confront the real people in the civil society. So our representatives should emerge from our community, our society, at the village level, or urban level, or provincial level. They should go up from down to up rather than top-down approach. Primary elections is a bottom-up approach. We can have primaries, and in some countries they practice this through civil societies, community centers, or urban councils. Bottom-up approach for the main general election. So US has what is called the primaries to filter out candidates. So there are various systems, but in Sri Lanka we don't have this kind of filtering mechanism. Reforming the political system, giving power back to the people. In the countries of the global south, as in the those of the north, political parties dedicate all their energies to contesting elections that will enable them to control the spaces of power at their wish. So it's the political party machinery which runs the show. Very often these spaces are used to perpetuate government by oligarchies in which nepotism, corruption, and personality cults are rampant. So people don't have much say. People have to select or elect a person nominated by the parties. In the face of this, people's movements and organizations are the only force capable of promoting real political change that goes beyond electoral platforms and that can genuinely empower the people, teaching them not just how to attain power, but how to be in power. So ideally, this should have been the way the voters are electing their representatives. So in many countries, if you consider these situations, political reforms are needed. Political parties are needed, electoral processes, representations. So in different political systems, these are different. So ideally, people should have the possibility to elect or select their true representatives. So it's a kind of bottom-up approach which we do not have in practice right now. Recall elections. There's a through an election petition or something is a procedure by which certain situations voters can remove an elected official from office through a referendum before that official term of office has ended, where the facility to recall exists if any representative comes to be perceived as not properly discharged their responsibility, they can be called back with a written request of a specific number of proportional votes, even where they are really legally available. Recall elections are only commonly held in few countries, including the US, Peru, Ecuador, and Japan. Recall elections for recalling the elected representatives. And also conflicts of interest by candidates, acceptance of gifts, lobbying members of parliament, bribes. So these are the things which disqualify the candidates. So I think these are very general guidelines for election. Crossover. We have seen in Sri Lankan or the parliamentary history so many crossovers. Sometimes the crossovers have changed power in the Sri Lankan parliament. MPs who cross over often claim that they do so in order to make a better contribution. But as far as parliamentary election contributions are concerned, the reverse is true. Are crossovers abusing the trust placed in them by the voters, or is there a good reason to allow crossovers? So these are the issues that the voter is concerned with. And in some countries, in some systems, the crossover is banned. We have sometimes these corrupt politicians will start crossing over to the other side, and there are various complications. So there are systems which prevents crossovers, which can change the final decision of the electoral process. August 31, 2022, 13 parliamentarians of the ruling Sri Lanka Padujana Peramuna party, including the party's chairman, GLPs, have crossed over to the opposition parliament. Okay, these are a few examples. So this has been happening. I think every time after election, people cross over to the other side, or to the winning side, most of the time. Some suggestions for discussion: make the election manifesto a legal document, at least 50% young MPs, at least 25% female candidates, educational and professional qualifications, and their track records to be representative. Conclusion: presence of complex electoral systems beyond voter acceptance of 74 years producing unsuitable politicians has disillusioned the simple and honest sovereign voters, excuse me, as manifested by the current situation in the country. The above mentioned proposals based on democracy, accuracy, and meritocracy offer a simple, transparent, national, and low-cost package of system changes demanded by the youth and the new generation to create a positive attitude towards our electoral system and the politicians. As a result, people, politicians, and the mass media will, as true Sri Lankans, adopt in unison the theme country first, country second, and country third, and work with dedication towards new and resilient Sri Lanka. Finally, let's work together to make sure that all concerned authorities, citizens, organizations, and the people of Sri Lanka will seize this final opportunity to bring about the said electoral reforms before the next election to usher a new era of sustainable peace, security, and development with honest and educated decision makers. What is the point of an educated population if the decision makers are uneducated and corrupt? Thank you.
So, I think you had quite a few good suggestions, very complex ones. So let's see what the audience will want to say. Anybody who
Thank
wants
you,
to
Professor
talk?
Disanayake. This is Ranjit.
Yes.
I really appreciate the discussion of Professor Disanayake, and also I'm thankful to Professor Chula for inviting me as well. And yeah, actually, many things were discussed. I think from I felt like it would be very challenging for us to get these things through. And one major, it was highlighted at the end, one major issue that we started facing was this crossover of MPs, and actually it's buying MPs. And some probably MPs consider it as a way of earning, actually. It has become a way of earning income generation. And it was not possible from the beginning. I think it was allowed by one Chief Justice after a court hearing. Actually, it was at the time of Professor Mr. Sarathen Silva, when he was the
Yes.
CJ, and that was allowed. I think it was not possible from the beginning. And that is a major I think as Professor Disanayake said, I think it really violate the rights of the voters who vote for such MPs. Actually, the people vote for one ideology and they cross over to the totally different, opposite ideology, and
That's completely
start
wrong. Yeah.
representing the opposite. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's totally wrong. I think really, really unacceptable, unethical. It's a really
Yeah.
unethical, ugly practice. Something that is taking place in Sri Lanka. I think it's
Yeah.
not happening in many other civilized
Yeah.
democracies.
Mm.
And another thing I thought actually whether it would be possible to limit the number of terms of a person who would get elected to the parliament, like maximum three times or something. Otherwise, the people, once a person is in the parliament, somehow their next major aim is to somehow get elected once again, and likewise to stay in the parliament until they are dead
Mm.
to be at least a opposition parliament member. So
Yeah.
this is a huge motivation for them to stay
Yeah.
there. I think that is also probably, if we can, I think would probably would be useful.
What do you say, Ranjit? Thanks for Ranjit for that comment, but I'll ask from Lakshan what he wants to say about that.
I didn't really get the point, Ranjit.
Regarding actually, I was mainly on 2 points. One thing actually, I was supporting the idea that we have to prevent the MPs crossing over, because that has led to serious kind of a malpractice, because they are parties are buying MPs.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
money, paying money,
Yeah.
and that has
Yeah.
become a way of earning. And the
Yeah.
other thing is actually, if it is possible now to limit the number of a person who get elected to the parliament, like, because the people, they try to stay in the parliament till they are dead, and for that they will do anything.
Mm. Mm. I don't know what's the constitution
I know.
provisions.
So, I mean, it's a problem that we have to address, isn't it? Are there any other comments from other people? I think, it's a very complex subject area, and then we need to kind of break it down to at least subtitles to see how we can address one of these. So I think if you can correct me, Lakshman, if you putting all what you said together, I've got kind of 4 titles. One
Yeah.
is how to promote voter allegiance rather than party allegiance from the elected members of parliament. So that means they will be more concerned about the voters rather than the party, because their survival depends on the voters. That's one subtitle. The other
Yeah.
one is, you talked about the election manifesto and its legality. What can be done to ensure that the legal manifesto is adhered to? That's another area that you wanted to do. The third
Yeah.
one was to minimize candidate bias by the party leaders. That is what is happening with this current proportional system, and how to minimize or get rid of it altogether. And you suggested mini elections, etc. And then how to prevent this crossover, which is actually totally against the democratic value what you are promising. So any
Yeah.
other kind of subtitles that you think that I missed in here?
Can I say something?
Yes, Kapil. Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I got confused with the time, so I was not there for the presentation. But what I thought was, now I 100% agree with Ranjit. If we are limiting the term of the president for 5 years, or two terms maximum, why not for the MPs also, so that at least younger people can come in and join the democratic process to run the country. The way it is now, from fellows are there until they are 75, 80 years old, 50 years in politics, including the present president.
Yeah. Yes.
What have they contributed?
Yeah, limiting terms is a good thing to do, I think. But some people now completely survive on politics, isn't it? whole life.
Yeah, because all the other professions has a retiring age, except politics.
I think it is best to limit their terms, just like the president, 2 terms maximum within the government, so that if they can prove, I don't know, maybe they can get an extension.
Yeah, actually, now as Professor Kapila says, it's like it doesn't mean that although the number of terms would be limited to be in the parliament, but they can stay active in politics. No, there's no barrier for that. So still they can be active politicians in the society.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 2 terms for be a member of parliament. That's okay. So if you say so, then I mean, how can someone become a, say, prime minister or something in this kind of seniority based kind of allocation? So this experience will be lost, isn't it?
Chula, you can do it this way. I think we can restrict their parliamentary terms to 2 terms, but they can always contest for the presidency. That's another 2 terms, if he is good enough.
Yeah, presidency. So, but if the presidency system has gone, then if it's a prime minister based, then how can you get there? Anyway, that's something to think about. And then, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I think actually now in some countries, in now even Canada, France, UK, I mean, many young people become even prime ministers. So that the experience actually beyond 70 years, I don't think that probably that amount of experience is really necessary. Of course, there should be some experience and maturity, and also the relevant, the related education. Well, I mean, in relation to managing finance, managing economics, managing international affairs. I mean, although these people are old and have been in the parliament, they are actually illiterate, probably, in relation to these areas.
Yeah, I think that is correct, because the world is so dynamic and changing so fast. And there is a need for new people to think in new terms. That's probably the what is relevant about this third generation coming forward to form political forces, because they understand better about the needs and how the world works than these old politicians, most of them. So that's what it is. Mervyn has raised the hand as well. Mervyn, yes.
Thanks, Chula. I was listening to the presentation as well as the debate so far, and I'm very much supportive of what's been discussed. And yeah, I fully agree there needs to be an upper limit, the age after which they should not be, in politics, in parliament. Otherwise, they are a barrier rather than help, as we have seen. So one option might be to say, for example, I don't know, 30 to 60, 65 for, to be in parliament. And yes, they can have 2 terms as an MP. And those that are, because of their experience and talent and whatever it is, are chosen to stand for election to be the prime minister or president. But let's say prime minister, they could still have 2 terms as long as they don't go beyond that age barrier. So if we had a framework like that in nominating people, that would be helpful.
Yeah. So yes, that is true. Yeah, that's another aspect that needs to be looked at. So the qualifications wise, now this is another area that has come into focus. Do we need the qualifications? And I mean, a perfect example was I was listening to the convocation address by Rohan Pathiagoda, and then he said we had the most qualified the central bank governor who had a PhD from Oxford, and he led the country in the totally wrong direction. So how come the qualification alone may not guarantee that you will have the best capable hands? Is it not?
I think one should look into the track record, Chula.
Yeah, track record is more important, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Track record, yes.
Yes, Kapila.
Yeah, in fact, I suggested this earlier also. That is, you can contest the parliament and come in without any qualification. But if you want to become a minister or prime minister,
Yeah, good
Yeah.
you
point.
have to have basic qualifications. Otherwise, I mean, we will be run by a country of idiots.
Yeah.
No,
Yes,
that we have actually taken into account. Even today, I mentioned about the ministers. You can't be an education minister if you haven't passed your O levels. So
Yeah.
that's kind of thing. Yeah. So that is true. That has to be there to some extent. And I was thinking that I could put some kind of a paper together based on what was discussed and presented today, and also any other comments that others have.
Chula, just observation with what is current situation in the UK.
Yeah.
Talking to some people a couple of days ago. Now, Liz Truss in current government or in a Conservative Party was regarded as quite a successful foreign minister.
Yeah.
And after Brexit, she traveled the globe and opened all sorts of doors for and signed contract for UK to start breaking free from EU shackles to get into trade agreements with various countries. Therefore, she was quite a bright front runner that people, party decided to make prime minister. But the problem was that she has no background in economics, and that was a weakness. And in that role, when in the current crisis being very much the economic crisis, whenever she was interviewed, she was coming across as lacking in confidence. And so compare that with Sunak, whose background is very much in that area. Whatever other factors are, he shows confidence with the people the markets are looking at. Now, that is a huge weakness in our politicians when they stand in international forums. Nobody comes across as being credible, having the confidence. Long time ago, we had somebody called Lakshman Kadirgamar that the international community took seriously and listened to. Since then, there are barely anybody that can represent the country. So it's very important having the qualifications, having the track record that people can look up to as an expert in their field. Without that, our country will always be in the second league or the third league.
Yeah. Individual credibility matters as well. That is very true.
Mm.
But then how do we get such people into this level is the problem, because there's quite a lot of obstacles for
Yes.
even an intellectual who speaks his subject openly get selected, because that kind of people they don't like. And we have professionals in the government, but they don't talk professionally. They don't say what they think. They say what matters or what is good for their leader. That is what they say. So this is not intellectual contribution to anything for a professional. So it's a different personality as well as professional competence coming together, isn't it? When you want that kind of person in politics. So these are the kind of things that is there. I mean, once I happened to fly through Singapore when they were having elections, and I was reading the paper, and the headline was, "Do not vote a failed member of parliament." That means if somebody has failed the elections at any point, then do not vote them. That is one of the things that was the headlines in the papers, saying because they contribute nothing after that. So these are kind of things that people have to learn. Any other things at all?
Can I be heard, Professor Chula?
Yeah, please.
I'm Bernard Fernando. Sorry, I have got into my granddaughter's platform as Devmari Fernando.
Yeah, that's
So, yes. So I was listening to Professor Disanakar's presentation. It was very good. I think it was sometimes word to word in alignment with my proposals.
yeah.
So since I am billed to speak on the subject
Next
next
week.
week.
Yeah, please,
Yes.
please, yeah.
Monday. So I'll refrain from taking your valuable time making comments on that.
Yeah.
Except to say that I have some additional proposals also to make. I think a summary of which I have already forwarded to you for the yes consumption of the listeners, so that they can read it and come in advance, so that then we can make the discussion more fruitful. So I will.
Yeah, thank you, Bernard, for coming in. And I will advertise what you said shortly after this meeting. And it's good that you're coming in. And I think, we want to walk the talk. We're not just talking. We somehow have to walk it. So that is why we're trying to develop a document based on all these ideas that is coming through. And
Yes.
I'll be happy to entertain whatever you want to write up and send it to me. So I'll put it together in some kind of format and then circulate again. And then we will discuss these together. So yes, Bernard, I will put your things as well to a common document as we come along. And then we will edit it together to see what is best and then come down to what is practically or realistically possible to do or something like that. So we have something in place here. So that is something. So this is the electoral process that we want to change, and how we should change is what we are focusing on. And then we are focusing on the fundamental changes that we are looking for. So I quite like this statement about voter allegiance, so that the elected people are more concerned about the voters, like in other say for example in the UK, rather than more concerned about the party. So that is something that is very good if we can get it back in our country as well. Anything else?
Yeah, Chula. Actually, although we keep saying that we are a democratic country, if you look at all these party constitutions, are they really democratic? No.
No, they are not. No,
Yeah.
they're not democratic at all. So that is why we
Questionable.
see the same faces and the names coming over and
Mm.
again and again and
Mm,
again. Yeah,
mm.
true. So it's quite nice to get feedback on that. I listened last night to Olcott oration that was done by one of the experts,
Tilanga.
Tilanga, and that is a very good eye opener. So if anyone know him, just say whether he can talk to us as well in a very simple term, so people can understand it exactly what he said. Anything else from others? So no questions at the moment. So I'm thankful you all joining me, and also people who could not join. Can you please send comments or any write-ups or any suggestions to me, and then I will put kind of a small kind of a proposal or a paper together so that it will be available, like even as a manifesto if somebody wants to use it for a listening government in the future, so that these things will get implemented, because we are now discussing these things as very independent people and expressing our honest opinions based on our experience, and then putting something together, so which will be very good, rather than a political party trying to do a manifesto and do that. So this kind of thing will be available for anybody to use as their manifesto or whatever, so if that's the pathway people wants to go. So yes, very good. Yeah, I'm thanked very much for all these ideas that's forwarded through Lakshman. And Bernard, we will be waiting to listen to you next time, because you know more about financial aspects of the country.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Let's
thank
meet.
you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Anything else for the moment? No. Okay, thank you all for joining, and thank you, Lakshman, for taking the initiative and putting the first brick to see how we can build it, and we'll see how
Thank
we
you,
can.
Chula.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Working together.
Chula.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.